Patience is intentional, hopeful waiting. Patience is when you wait and endure with hopeful expectation, right? And it is also a spiritual discipline. When you can come to the understanding that there is an appointed time and an appointed purpose for all things that are created, and you can agree to that, then you can start working on the areas where you don't have patience. So, you know, you are experiencing true patience when you're looking forward with a confident expectation. It is a forward expectation, not one where you keep reverting back to the past or going backwards while you are waiting. Okay. Patience is not just letting life happen with no effort from you, with laziness and procrastination, right? We cannot continue to lie to ourselves about that. Saying I am waiting on God because you are afraid to make a move or you're too lazy to move, right? Or you think it's somebody else's problem. That is not patience. We all have a created purpose. Patience is also not when you are waiting in despair and desperation and in anguish. There is a confidence and hope, no matter the depth of your reasons to give in to those types of emotions, right? And you will always have a reason to go to the depths of emotions like despair and anguish, right? Because the enemy's goal is to get you to lose control so that he can then gain control, right, in those weak moments that you have. And you counteract that by not allowing your vulnerability to supersede the presence of patience or the trust in its perfect work. With patience, you are able to be vulnerable, right? Process your emotions in a healthy way without leaving cracks because you're choosing to not give up the guard of peace and that guard of discipline that you have, right? Your level of patience is acquired and then maintained by you, right? No one can give it to you and nobody can create it for you. You choose to trust, you choose to hope, you choose to endure and maintain certain expectations in faith. This is something that you must choose to do. Nobody else can choose that for you. Each event that occurs within your lifespan, you respond to it according to the level of patience that you have. So that means even things that you may be experiencing for the first time, right? The amount of patience that you have acquired helps you navigate those moments gracefully. There is a grace that comes with patience that you cannot buy, you cannot steal, you cannot fake it, right? It must be gone through. So there's a type of strength in patience that isn't always seen visibly. And sometimes it's not until you hear someone's testimony, until you get the results of the thing that you've been praying for, that you realize that you were in the company of someone who has stabilized their faith and trust in God. There is power in trusting in his timing, in his protection, in his word, and in his promise, and then enduring and expecting until it comes to pass. So it's this forward expectation. It's not the expectation where you are waiting, right? And you're not confident in what's getting ready to happen, right? If you have trust issues, that may be why you are impatient, okay? Sometimes people who don't trust people to do something right, so they're always doing it themselves, right? They can end up overexerted. They can end up overwhelmed and even end up putting themselves in danger mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, right? Not trusting someone to love you right, okay, can cause you to become reclusive and impulsive. So you're isolating yourself, but you're also willing to make very quick, rash decisions without any consideration of consequences or long-term effects. That's impatience, okay? Impatience can lead to strained mental health, and it opens the door for mental, emotional, and even physical disorders and diseases. So we have to be careful with that level of impatience that we have. The deeper you trust, the more patience you acquire, which means there's more power towards your steadiness and towards your focus, right? Right now, we are living in an impatient age, right? With all the technology that makes everything faster, makes everything quicker. Everybody wants instant gratification, right? The whole world is operating in a constant rush every day. It's just a rat race. But patience is a virtue. Okay. This means patience is a valuable quality that represents a certain strength in your character. It is a quality that is needed when we face unforeseen difficulties and hardships, and also the trials that we sometimes cause, right? Not all problems come from outside forces. Sometimes we mess up and we create our own issues, right? But even then, patience is important because it helps us take responsibility. It helps us to fix the fixable mistakes, right? And release the unfixable ones, right? And grow from them without becoming overwhelmed or frustrated. To keep patience as a virtue, it must be a habitual decision, okay? Meaning that you're constantly making the choice to wait, trusting in that hopeful forward expectation. You're not waiting, constantly looking back at the past at what has been. You're not waiting and turning around and reverting back to the old you. Okay, that's not patience. To operate in the power of patience, understand that it needs to be cultivated. You need to deal with your acceptance issues. And if you have issues with acceptance, that was session 31. That was almost at the beginning of our sessions. Being able to accept the current moment without resisting what it is trying to teach you, right? And renewing or removing certain mindsets, okay? Patience allows you to be more strategic and focused, which breaks the power of regret, right? Because you avoid those impulsive decisions, okay? Patience assists with your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well being, right? By reducing stress and anxiety, maintaining hope, promoting peace, increasing your happiness and satisfaction. This is the power of patience. Patience is powerful when you can hold on to it until you see its perfect work. Patience is powerful when you can hold on to that. You can hold on to that weight. You can endure a little longer, right? When you see its perfect work. And to see its perfect work, that's when you see the continual fulfillment of God's plan, right? We don't just stop at the first thing he does for us or the first way that he make. Okay? The perfect work is the transformation it brings that shifts waywardness, that shifts the misdirection, that shifts your lack of faith unto great faith, right? When we get off track, our patience realigns us back to the master's plan. And that's what we are here to do. We are here to discover the master's plan for our lives individually, right? Because there's a plan individually and there's also a plan collectively. Anxiety, worry, fear can produce impatience, which interferes with the testing of your faith. That's one test that you want to continue to pass. Okay. Impatience is irritability with anything or anyone who gets in your way or causes delay in you getting what you want. That's what impatience is, right? You're quickly or easily provoked into frustration and anger because you're not in control of when or how a desired result happens. And I know you think that, oh, it's just because I can't wait, right? No, the reason you can't wait is because you're not in control and you want to control when and how you get what you want. Your lack of control of when things will happen is rooted in fear or selfishness. Impatience that isn't acted upon is not a bad thing, right? But when you become impulsive within your thoughts and your mind begins racing, or your temper begins to flare up and your heart starts pumping harder, right? You have to recognize these signals as your body's way of alerting you that anger and rage is about to come up, right? That is when impatience can become dangerous. Impatience can also lead to bitterness, and we do not need roots of bitterness. When other people have a part in causing delay for you, Your impatience can lead to envy, jealousy, resentment, and bitterness. Envy is the strong desire for what someone has. And if you are not careful, it can create a miserable character trait where you start taking joy in somebody else's pain and misery, or somebody else's failure, somebody else's shortcoming, right? Holding grudges can make you an envious person. Creating a bitter root. We talked about bitter roots in session 75. If you're having issues with bitterness and you want to dive, in depth into that, go back to session 75 and you can find the full sessions. If you go to the playlist on YouTube, go under full sessions and it'll have all of them. They should be in order. Okay. Creating a bitter root is you seeking revenge for an offense, right? So when something bad happens to cause the person that you're holding a grudge against to feel some type of negative emotion, or something negative happens to them, you feel that sense of relief or gladness that your offense have been avenged. That's envious, right? And that lets you know that you have bitterness rooted somewhere in there. When you get joy off of when someone who has offended you, something happens to them, there might be a bitter root somewhere in there. Okay. And envy is not really the same as jealousy, right? Even though they both involve other people having something that you want. Jealousy comes out of being impatient because of the threat or the fear of somebody getting what you feel is yours, or getting it quicker than you, right? And so I believe that envy and jealousy can sometimes be mixed with admiration, but they both can stir up resentment. And resentment shows up when there has been an injury to you where you feel wronged, right? So if you feel robbed of time and opportunities, right? Being impatient can make you resentful. Bitterness can be on the same level of resentment, except I believe that bitterness is rooted more in disappointment and anger together, right? There's an anger that comes with bitterness that may not necessarily come with resentment, right? So resentment is one of those things that grows from unprocessed rejection, right? Again, rejection. We had a whole session on that. That's session 58. If you're dealing with rejection in any form, go back, right? These are things that we have already discussed. So with rejection and resentment coming up because of rejection, you begin making unhealthy decisions, fear-based decisions, rejection-fueled decisions that you will regret, right? Because it causes you to waste more time and more opportunities. So this is how impatience can cause the bitter roots of envy, jealousy, and resentment, which will cloud your judgment and take so much mental energy and time out of your life. So your feelings and emotions, if not managed properly, will eventually affect your health. A sound, peaceful heart is life to you, and it's healthy because your emotions are under control, right? All of those other feelings that impatience cause is rottenness to your bone. It afflicts your soul, right? It causes disease of the mind, of the will. It causes you to act in ways based off of what you feel. And if what you feel is based off of a lie or an untruth, right? You're now experiencing these issues in your mind and in your body that was based on something that was not true. So impatience also brings about discouragement. And how do you know when you are feeling discouraged? You may start to feel drained all of a sudden. We talked about mental energy, right? A lot of things that waste mental strength, right? That's session 82. That's the one we did right before this one. Um, you're having low energy, low tolerance, low patience for anything that causes you to grow or causes you to heal. That's how you know you may be a little bit discouraged. You may no longer be interested in setting goals for yourself anymore, right? Achieving goals or enjoying what you've already accomplished. You may be discouraged, and patience can cause discouragement, right? You may be discouraged if you're going to sleep, but you're not really resting, or not even sleeping at all. You may have insomnia, and you're constantly having this negative outlook on life, even about positive things. Like when positive things happen, you find the negative in the positive thing. You may have discouragement, and it may be due to impatience. So impatience can be the root of the issue or the fruit of the issue, right? It can be the root of the issue or the fruit that issue that you have not resolved will bear. And if you want to watch the session on impatience, that is 41. So as you can tell, we've gone through a whole lot of topics already to get to where we are now. And there's such a broad range of them. Patience is not passive. It is powerful. Okay. It may be quiet or still sometimes, but it still holds weight. It gives you control over your emotions, right? It makes you an effective communicator, right? Because you can wait your turn to speak. You can listen with intent, right? Not to respond, but to actually hear what someone is saying and understanding what they are saying. Patience also gives you power over your tongue and over your responses, right? You don't have the feeling that you have to get your point across. You can wait. The kind of faith that moves mountains around you and within you is created in the perfection of patience. Okay. Patience allows certain processes that you must go through in order to grow, whether it's healing, whether you're learning, breakthrough, consistency, right? Humility, support, self-evaluation, self-reflection, right? You will need to be able to get through all of these processes that we all need to grow and evolve into our authentic selves and operate in our predetermined purpose, right? Patience allows you to go through those processes. It allows you to go through that process of healing, of learning, right? Of becoming consistent, of becoming humble, right? And being able to reflect and become self-aware of what you're going through and what you're bringing, how you're operating. Patience is an active power in motion, even if it's in the waiting period. Patience is active power in motion, even if it's in the waiting period. It is perfecting what needs transformation in your life. Okay. You'll find that the power of patience allows people to trust your strength, right? It creates opportunities by placing you in the right places at the right time with the right people, along with giving you the clarity that you need to overcome challenges without overstimulating your emotions. The power of patience give you resilience and the ability to stay calm when others freeze or overreact. Okay. And this is very important, especially in life or death situations. Patience gives you the power to stay consistent, right? Because you're able to tolerate a little discomfort. You don't have to always be in control. That's what patience does. This way you can commit to long-term goals when otherwise you may have given up on those things, right? Because you're allowing patience to have its perfect work. Patience also causes other people to rely on you, to trust your guidance and trust your leadership. Okay? Patience is a transformative force. Who will you become when you wait? I don't know if you've ever thought of that question. Who would have you become had you waited? Had you waited to say the thing you said? Had you waited to do the thing that you did? Had you completed the process? Right? When you allow yourself the time needed to be nourished, to evolve into who you were created to be, this is what patience does. Okay? So let the work of patience be perfected so that you can use its power to be transformed. This is the power of patience. We don't want to allow impatience to rule and reign in our life, right? The power of patience overrules regret. So if you dealt with a lot of regret in your life, you definitely need to check out the session on impatience, right? But in learning how to overcome impatience, you need to know to let patience have its perfect work. It's not a bad thing to wait for some things. It aligns you to get where you need to be, to wait for the right person to meet you there, right? To save you from an accident, or make sure you're not involved in things that you shouldn't be involved in. Waiting is not always bad, but understand that it is that forward expectation. It's not the expectation where you're being lazy, where you're procrastinating, where you're afraid to move. Okay? You can't call that patience, right? You can, but it's not the truth. So that concludes our session for today. So if you are in need of a restart, if you're in need of direction, of purpose, or just support in, an additional support, spiritually, emotionally, or mentally, then Replenish 3125 is for you. And so if you know anyone who feels stuck, right? They're in a place where they might be in therapy. They might be in counseling. They may have just went on a fast and didn't see the result they needed. If you know anyone like that, just share the platform with them. Let them know that help is available. Uh, the videos, the sessions are all free, but of course, we do offer one-on-one sessions. They can contact me directly, and they can use the email replenish3125@gmail.com. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for continuing to come on and support. I really hope that it is transforming your life. I really hope that the wisdom that has been spoken is manifesting in your life. Like each week, I hope that what you're learning, you're actually applying it in your life, and even sharing it with people when you recognize that they're going through or dealing with some things that we've spoken about on the group session. So I pray that you all have a blessed weekend, and I will see you all, God's willing, next Friday at 3 p.m. God bless.